Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about mapping arguments. And I hope I'm going to work on this. This isn't the perfect solution for future things when I need to draw, but for right now, I'm just going to share my iPad screen, right? And I want you guys to look at this. Sorry, so this is our argument. Dogs are friendlier than cats. Dogs are easier to train than cats. Dogs don't require a litter box. Therefore, dogs better pets than cats, right? And so how do we map this argument? How do we show the support it has? Well, we give each premise a little box. You guys get to see how awful my handwriting is. One, two, three. They each get their, oh, not little box, little circle. Four. And then to show that each on its own provides some support for the conclusion, we draw a little arrow from our premise to our conclusion. Each on its own provides some support. Well, there we go. But now let's move on to two. Well, how do we show that these two have to work together to provide any support? Well, with that, we do something a little different. We have little circles for our premises still, but to show that they work together, to show that we have this conjoint support, we put a little bracket around them and group them together. And there we have our conclusion. One and two work together to prove our conclusion. Here we have independent support again. Pretty simple to diagram or map this one. Sorry, I'm going to just diagram, map, use those terms interchangeably. I've seen books that talk about both. Um, so, one and two each on their own. We don't put them together. We draw a little arrow from them showing they provide some support for the conclusion. Now let's get to the last one, right? Remember, this one had a slightly more complex structure. One and two work together, three and four work together. How do we indicate that? Well, what we do is to put all the premises that work together. We draw little brackets around one and two, around three and four. This shows that each of these sets work together. And they all together provide some support for five, our conclusion. Now, we'll talk a lot more about this. Some arguments have much more complex structure than this. In the next lecture, I'm going to give you guys some examples of arguments that have much more complex, structures. In class, we'll talk about and spend a lot of time diagramming arguments that have more complex structures, but hopefully you guys can see, this is just sort of a beginning. All right. So I'm going to do one more lecture on the stuff we talked about, the arguments we did in class. If you guys remember this argument for legalizing all drugs, we will come back to that one. You know, that one has more complex structure than the others we've talked about. So we will, actually do a little bit of work with that one, show how we work with arguments that have more complex structures. Um, all right. So hopefully you guys are getting a little bit of an idea how this works. We're going to use these basic pieces to build up to something a little more complicated, but hopefully the basic idea makes sense to you.